The floral tributes were ripped down again last night from a wooden fence opposite the scene of last week's incident on South Park Crescent. The residential road was quiet and a single police car was parked on the drive of Mr. Osborne Brooks' house, which is still cordoned off. A second police vehicle parked farther along the road drove away at about 9 p.m. The makeshift shrine had been re-erected for a second time by members of Henry Vincent's family, who went back to the Crescent after they were torn down by a neighbour. Earlier yesterday, the family of Mr. Vincent returned to Hither Green in South London to replace the shrine created for the professional burglar after he was killed by Richard Osborne Brooks during a break into his home. They had left flowers as many had been torn down overnight, many by angry neighbors. The man who took down the flowers left by the family yesterday stood on them and said, "The flowers need burning. They are an insult to the memory of the geezer who was burgled." He then said, "I reckon he is good off dead. He deserved to be dead." The man who removed the shrine wore a beanie hat and did not want to give his name. He used scissors to tear down the flowers. The neighbors of Mr. Osborne Brooks have been left angry by the tributes left for Mr. Vincent, which included dozens of bunches of flowers. The flowers for Mr. Vincent, 37, had been tied to a fence opposite the home of Mr. Osborne Brooke in southeast London. Elvina Lee, who said she was Mr. Vincent's first cousin, said to BBC it was the best place for these flowers to be, referring to the people who took down the flowers. She said, "I don't know what's wrong with these people." She said, "He wasn't a murderer, he wasn't a rapist, they're putting him as a monster." Mr. Osborne Brooks was held on suspicion of murder at first but has been released with no further action. An anonymous vigilante filmed himself dismantling the shrine left in the burglar's memory. Posting the video on Facebook, he wrote, "When I heard that the family of Henry Vincent had placed flowers on the road where he died, I was extremely furious, so I drove to South London, to the road, and saw the flowers and stuff. I noticed some unlawfully attached onto a fence, which is someone's private property, so the gentle who owns the house gave me verbal consent to remove. He told me that he was intending on removing the flowers himself tomorrow, but I gladly did it for him voluntarily. After all, he was an elderly gentleman himself as well." One neighbor has said that the flowers have been left simply to antagonize Osborne Brooks. Another one said, "Osborne Brooks probably worked his whole life to get that house and now he's out through no fault of his own." The pensioner, Mr. Osborne Brooks, has been living in a safe house with 24-hour police guard after he received death threats from friends of Mr. Vincent. Many of the neighbors have said that Richard is the real victim.